I know you wanted to go and check in with your people and see what they want in this situation. But, boy, when I talked to you last night and when I talked to you this morning, you were crestfallen. You were like, nothing good can happen in this situation. And then what happened?
Well, Chris, I'm here at the Delaware City Fire Company Hall where we just finished a robust town hall. Several hundred Delawareans came out with a wide range of views about Dr. Ford's allegations about Judge Kavanaugh. But I want to start by saying how grateful I am to my friend, Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, for acting on his concerns. He's heard, just as I have, here tonight as well as throughout yesterday. I've heard from a lot of survivors of sexual abuse who've come forward with their stories. And I think it was hard for anyone to listen to Dr. Ford testify yesterday for hours and not come away with some doubt, with some concern. It was also hard to listen to Judge Kavanaugh and not hear the pain that this has caused his family and his categorical denial of the allegations against him. Senator Flake conveyed to me that he really still had doubts and that he was listening to the argument that I and others were making that we should take 1 week for a limited in scope and duration further background investigation.
All right, so Senator,
because,
take
as
me
you
through
pointed out in the opening, there's a few things that we could get into that might really help.
Well, we're definitely going to get into it. But I don't want to leave the moment because we don't see this. You know, we don't see this on, like, mundane stuff, you know, like budget stuff where you guys should be finding common ground. It looks like people are trying to find common enemies. But on something like this, so polarizing. So Flake says he's a yes. They come at him in the elevator, and he seems hurt by that, and he has a reputation for being a sensitive person, that he, you know, he feels deeply, he processes things. You know, not every man does, but he has a reputation for that. I watched that scene in the elevator, and I was like, oh, he can't wait to get out of here. He just wants to cast his vote and be done with it. Boy, was I wrong. When he tapped you on the shoulder and said, let's go outside, what did you think was going to happen, and what did happen?
Well, I frankly thought that we were going to go in the ante room and just have a conversation about how, while we respect each other as senators and hope to remain friends, that this was a pretty bitter moment for both of us, because each of us is on the other side of what ought to happen with Judge Kavanaugh. I was so encouraged when he said to me, you know, Chris, this whole thing is tearing our country apart, and we have to do something. We have to do something to show that we can hear each other, and that the argument that you're making, if we can find a way to set the parameters right, is something that we ought to consider doing. 1 week, not indefinite, not every possible allegation. The allegations in front of us right now. Will you work with me on that? Can you get some commitment out of Senator Feinstein that that will be the scope of this? And it started a conversation, and as you noticed, the two of us were back there talking for a few minutes, and then a second senator, and then a third senator, and a fourth senator came back, and ultimately we had virtually the whole committee back there having a very vigorous argument.
So how did it unfold?
That struck both.
So how did it unfold? When you heard that, you said you were encouraged. I think you're underselling it. You must have been in some mild state of shock that it was going that way after the way it seemed in that room. But when they started coming over,
that's right.
How easy was it for you to get Feinstein and other people on both sides of the ball to be okay with this?
Exceptionally difficult, because frankly, some of the sharpest partisans on the committee came back and really leaned on Senator Flake very hard to say this is ridiculous, this process is over, the FBI has closed the investigation, there's absolutely nothing for them to investigate. And there were others who were arguing forcefully the other side, and then accusations started going back and forth about what Democrats were really trying to do, what Republicans were really trying to do.
How did Flake take it?
Chris, there were a couple of really encouraging moments.
How did Flake deal with that kind of pressure?
Flake was very stoic. You know, you saw the result, which was that he came out, and stood firm. You know, this really, frankly, is all hanging on his willingness. Yeah. He voted to move forward with the committee process to show good faith with his caucus. But at the end of the day, what will keep this week a week is his willingness and several other undecided senators to be clear that they're not going to vote for cloture and they're not going to vote for Kavanaugh until we get the report back from the FBI.
All right, I want to get into the details of it. I want to get into the details of it, but just in terms of your time in there, and look, you're known as a bridge builder. You're known as, you know, you'll work. I mean, the Senate's supposed to be about that, but you have a good reputation with people about, you know, you're someone you can work with on things. Did you ever imagine that in this disconnected, a scene, because I mean, we were just sitting, shoulder to shoulder, 24 hours ago having this conversation, and it was like, what a horrible day. Somebody's not telling the truth when you listen to these two people and their testimony, and there's very little interest in figuring out who that is. That's where we were 24 hours ago. Have you ever had anything like this happen before on something that was so divisive that in the critical moment, when the side with the leverage was about to win, it was someone from their side who said, I'm not going to win at all costs. I'm going to win the right way. We're going to do this out of fairness.
I'll tell you, Chris, I can think of several instances over the last 8 years where on the biggest issues, the tax package, the tax break, changing the rules of the filibuster, changing some other things that have been important changes in the Senate, a group of us have come together, tried to work out a bipartisan solution, and often failed. It is very difficult. The partisanship and the division, the pressures that are brought to bear on senators make it very hard to come to reasonable solutions. The last time that a group of us were meeting about the Supreme Court and the filibuster rule, it was in John McCain's